What's up, guys? You know who it is. Marcus J. Jackson with another Live Life for you. All right, Live Life number 29, that is, right? So, tonight we're going to be talking about my spiritual journey. Okay. Um, as you know, it's National Suicide Prevention Month, the month of September. And I have been doing the Live Life series almost a month now. Um, 30 videos almost. So, I'm pretty excited about that. A buddy of mine that I spent some time in the Army with decided to take his own life. And which is another reason why I decided to establish a platform for people, that have, suicidal thoughts or they want to talk to someone because you don't want to be by yourself when you're thinking about stuff like that. If you attempted suicide before, yeah, you know how it is, and you can share this video with someone, that it may help as well, and vice versa. If you're completely, if you're okay per se, you can share this video with someone who you think it may be useful to. Oh, let me take these earphones out. Um, so definitely, feel free to share this video. I am. I make myself available every night from the hours of 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. So I'm usually on here till about 1 o'clock. So I'll do an hour video, and people will leave comments and ask questions and so on and so forth. And I'll check the comments periodically to see if there's something that needs to be discussed or so on and so forth. So feel free to ask questions. I have definitely made it a point not to talk about my spiritual journey. But I felt the need to today because I had a really good conversation with a young man today, and he was really upset about losing his family per se, due to his belief system, and he felt like it wasn't something that it was that serious that he would have to give up his family. So I myself do not subscribe to fear-based belief systems, okay? Because they are very dogmatic, and they cause a great deal of confusion in the mind of people who are trying to find themselves, if you will, okay? So let me get started real quick. So let me check my comments. All right, got a few people join. Okay, Uncle Herb, I see you. Hello, Melissa. Hello, James. Good morning to you. Good morning. I like to start out with some deep breaths just to ground ourselves and bring ourselves back to our body. Okay, so what we'll do is take a deep breath. Right, breathe it in, diaphragmatic breathing, allow your belly to fill with air. Exhale. Okay. One more time, take a deep breath. Wow. All right. Okay. So now, let me see where to start. Oh my goodness, man. There's like a ton of information that I could share. Um, so I'll just start with, like I said earlier, there's a lot of people that believe in dogmatic belief systems, um, and it's usually fear-based, and a lot of fear-based beliefs has brought us to the situation where we are now. There's suicides, public displays of hate, hate crimes, um, through the roof now. The media is pushing the propaganda that, we should be terrified of all black males, or there's some type of, um, I don't know, that they're just lending to that stigma of, um, you know, that the only people that get shot by the police are, black males, and that's not the case. Um, I was talking to a young man earlier today too, and he was like, so that means black police officers never shoot anybody. Black police officers are that good that they never shoot anybody. And it's never in the media. And I explained to him that's not a part of the narrative. All right. So to in order to keep a in order to keep the fear-based belief system going, you have to have a narrative, right? And the narrative is, that black men are dangerous, or people of the black race are always in an uproar and things of that nature. So, and that's because of a fear-based belief system. There's a fear, or there's a belief based in fear. So that's why things happen, the way that they do. And not only that, the situation with Colin Kaepernick, protesting, trying to speak out against police brutality. There's a fear that, there's going to be a great acceptance of that. And it has been, right? There's been a great acceptance of that. And the more push that it gets, the bigger it becomes. So, it's almost counterintuitive to the media, because now they're pushing that, although it is a part of the narrative as well, but it's working for both sides, right? Everybody's getting a little piece of that pie, although there is a lot of money to be made with that type of narrative in sports as well. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about my journey. Okay, but that's where it started. I began to question these things, and I'm like, some things really don't add up, because you as you grow up, some of us grow up in the church, or some of us grow up kind of sheltered and not have a real understanding of what life is until we get out on our own. Till we get out, a lot of us we finally escape that bubble that we live in, that our parents put us in, when we go to college. And we are actually around people of different races, different diversities, and so on and so forth. And those people give us a completely different experience than what our parents taught us, right? So, if you had so-called white parents, and, they told you about so-called black people, and how they act, and not to trust them, and how they do, and so on and so forth, then you get around these people, you get around each other, and none of that's true. None of that's true. It could be far from the truth. It's completely different. But it's because of the fear-based dogma that our parents raised us in, right? That we have these beliefs about other races, other cultures, other customs, and other dynamics as a whole. And it's like, wow, I never even, sometimes you find yourself, you don't even know how to interact with certain people, or people of a different race, because what you've been taught by your parents. So, that's where my journey began. Once I left home, not realizing that there is so much more, and I had questions it was so much more than what my parents were able to answer, right? So I grew up in the church. My father was a pastor, and he pastored a church. Then he got his own church. He got two churches that he had on his own. He probably still preaches to this day. And for 18 years, I listened to him. I listened to him, talk about the Bible. I listened to him, um, preach about the Bible. I listened to hundreds of preachers, um, preach messages, hundreds upon hundreds of messages. And, ultimately they were all the same. They all had this, there we go. They were all the same. They were, basically, talking about the hell, the fire, the brimstone, sin is this and sin is that, trust in God, trust in Jesus, and all of, all of that. And if you don't, then you're gonna go to hell, right? Or if you don't, then you're sinning, and God hates sinners, and God doesn't like sinners, and Jesus died for everybody, and don't disappoint Jesus, and don't disappoint God, and all of this. It was just so dogmatic, and I was so confused, because what I used to do is, if you ever been in church, they have an altar call, right? So I would go down to the altar and get saved, right? I would go down to the altar, get saved, of course, and I would, and when I was old enough to realize that, the stuff that I was doing was a sin, right? At what, 11, 12 years old. So you hear the pastor say, well, if you lie, it's a sin, and if you don't repent, you're gonna go to hell. If you cheat, and you sin, or it's a sin, and if you don't repent or you don't ask God for forgiveness, you're gonna go to hell, right? So I'm like, okay, cool, all right. So I got this down, I got that down. This is last Sunday. I repented from cheating, or I repented from stealing. Okay, but I cussed. I cussed all this week, right? So as a child, I'm going back. I'm going back every time there's an altar call, and it's like, everybody's kind of looking at me crazy, like, why does he walk down here every single altar call? Like, what's wrong with this dude? And so people begin to ask my father, what, is he, what's wrong? What's going on? And they would ask my mom, why does he keep walking down here every Sunday? It was cool, for the first 3 or 4 Sundays, but now, this is the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 16th time that I'm walking down the aisle trying to accept Christ, or I don't know, like it's just weird, like, or get saved. Right, so I was steady trying to figure it out. This is as a child, because I sincerely loved the whole concept of God and Jesus Christ. I loved it, and I thought wholeheartedly, but that's what we were supposed to do. That's how it was supposed to be. We were supposed to be fearful of God and Jesus, and we were supposed to be fearful of doing something wrong. And the whole time it was really stressful as a child. Now that I think back on it, like, it was really, I was already stressed out, in the home anyway, because my father was a pastor, my mom was the first lady, of course, and it would be nice that they would get into it, and he would literally beat the hell out of my mom. Like, he abused my mom physically for years, right? And of course, until I was old enough to, defend myself and defend her as well. But you can see the confusion, because I literally could not understand, like, this man is preaching about, God and Jesus, and how wonderful God and Jesus is, but he's beating the hell out of my mom, every other night, or every night, and of course, it went on, and there were times where she fought back, and then they stopped. But there was times where she had to go to the hospital. It was times where she had to wear makeup, to cover the bruises and stuff on her face. So you can understand why, somebody would have a struggle and become suicidal and have suicidal thoughts, going through some stuff like that, especially when you've been taught this fear-based belief system, right? It's very, very dogmatic, very, very, I'm going to get you, I'm going to put you in a position, and as soon as you do something wrong, I'm going to punish you. But I'm going to make you go through this life, and I'm going to make you do wrong so that I can punish you, and it's kind of like, huh? Like, I don't get it. But, I'm sinning or I'm doing wrong because, I'm, as a child, I forged my mom's signature on my report card or a progress report or something like that, and I get in trouble for it. And I feel guilty and I feel bad, and or I would get into a fight at school and get in trouble, and I would wonder why did God or why did Jesus let me get into a fight again? Why didn't he protect me? Because I had a fight darn near every day at school. Every single day at school I was fighting. It was inevitable all through my elementary years, like from kindergarten to the 6th grade. I mean, it was just I was a torn child, right? I was like, this is crazy. Why am I, why do I have to, if God is up there and I know Jesus, I would lay in the bed, I would pray at night, and I would be like, God, Jesus, can you hear me? Just listen to me and please stop my dad from beating the hell out of my mom. I don't want them to fight anymore. I just want them to get along, all that, right? And, day after day, same thing would happen. Day after day, same thing would happen. I would end up getting in a fight at school, and it was a lot. it was a lot. So as I began, the rebellion began probably when I was probably about 14. And I started to ask questions. I started to ask about, the Bible, and he would get frustrated. My father would get frustrated with me because he didn't have an answer. Now that I've grown, I started studying the Bible and I went into ministry for myself. I understand now, right? I get it. I understand why he didn't have the answers, because he'd never studied. He never went into the depths of the customs, the language, the manner of people in the Bible land, or the biblical history. And it's now I realize it's all allegory, and they were all concepts, and these were things that we were supposed to recognize and manifest in ourselves. I get that now, but I did not understand that at first. So now, I'm 14 years old. I mean, let's go back. Now I'm 14 years old, trying to figure out, still trying to figure out this whole, God and Jesus concept. So, excuse me. So I'm like, okay, well, all right, well, maybe maybe he'll get to it at some point, right? So at 14 years old, maybe I'm like, all right, well, maybe he'll get to it. In this message, he'll answer the question that I asked, because he would probably go study or go read about it and go from there and talk about it in the message or in the Bible study or whatever. So, lo and behold, it never happened. He was never able to answer any of my questions, like, why does God allow bad people to do things that they're not supposed to do, right? So inevitably, he knew I was talking about him, of course, and he couldn't answer that question. Maybe he felt guilty, maybe he felt bad, maybe he was operating at such a low vibration that he felt such great shame and guilt, and he just wasn't able to verbalize it to me. Maybe he knew, who knows. But with that, I still could not grasp the concept. So there was always this doubt in the back of my mind. It was always this, something's not right. There's got to be something more. There has to be someone or something to provide answers, right? Because all this is already in me, right? The love of God or the love of Jesus Christ was already in me, right? So, but I didn't know that then. Like, I didn't know everything I was looking for was already in me, regardless if there was a belief system or not, right? I was already understanding that, my subconscious was already working, and my superconscious was already working. My conscious overall awareness was already working, right? But I didn't know that at the time, so I didn't know, what to call it, or I didn't know what it was. I had no idea that, there was a such thing as enlightenment. I had no idea there was a such thing as getting to know yourself, and I never realized that I myself was a part of the universe, right? I myself am an infinite being. Like, there was no time where I did not exist, right? I didn't know that, So now that I realize now that I am that I am. I am that one, that entity, that everything that I was seeking, I am that. Right? You are, and that's the same thing with you. You are the God or the Jesus that you're seeking. And why did my camera freeze? Come back. Oh well. So as crazy as it sounds, I'm just like, man, this is a lot. This is a lot to deal with. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like, I was like, this is so much. So now, now this is at the present time. So let me go back. So he, so my pops, not my pops, but my father at the time, which is actually my stepdad. I didn't meet my biological father until like 35 years later, right? Or 30 years later. So I was basically 16 years old. I was about 16, and it was one morning. He woke up, or I don't know what happened, but they were in the kitchen arguing, which was probably going to turn into a fight. And I had enough. I was just like, you know what? I don't want to. I'm done with this. We're not going to fight anymore. You're not going to fight. You're not going to hit my mom anymore, or nothing like that. I was like, I'm not going to let you do it. And I will never forget, like, she had on a pink dress, right? Or a pink outfit that she got from Macy's. We used to shop at Macy's back in the day, right? It was at the Galleria Mall. So she had this pink dress on because she was going for a promotion, right? It was a pink dress suit. Like, she had a business suit that had a top and a skirt to go with it. So, and she was rocking the little heels, and it was like not so much as it's not light pink. It was like a dark pink, like a rose color almost. And they got into a little pushing and shoving contest, and he spilled coffee, made her spill her coffee all on her dress. And man, I saw red after that. I went crazy. And needless to say, he never touched my mom again after that. But in my mind, you have to understand that I'm already experiencing a spiritual awakening, right? The butterfly is starting to crack open the cocoon, the worm, what do you call that? Anyway, the worm is starting to break over the cocoon and starting to turn into a butterfly, right? So I'm like, something's going on, and I'm already, stressed out from waking up at night to hearing them slap and beat on each other. Then I'm going to school, getting into a fight, every day, every other day at least. And I'm like, okay, so now that happens, and I start to realize that this is not, this isn't right. You know what I'm saying? This isn't right at all. And then it really started happening after I started going around other children, other preacher and pastors' children, and I would begin to, I would ask questions, and I would say, hey, this, and I would watch their interaction with their mother and father, right? And it's like, well, that's not, what's going on with that? I'm like, that's different. So you begin to notice there's some differences going on, and I, I was like, this is crazy. They don't act like that. They don't look like they slap and beat on each other and all that. And, you know, uh, his mom gets to talk and and do this kind of stuff in the church, and my mom rarely said anything because of living out of fear of my father at the time. So it's like, wow, really? But yeah, it's a lot when you're a child and you're praying for your father to stop beating up your mom. It's hard. It becomes hard to believe, in this whole God and Jesus concept. Like it's invalid. Like it doesn't even serve a purpose at that point, right? So as I continued, I began to. Let me go back even a little further before I jump ahead. I would be in the church, and we had the church daycare and had all the little events and everything. So I would hear my, the women of the church. They would cuss around us because they thought we were too young to understand what they were saying. So I'm a fairly young, fairly little guy. And I can remember hearing my mother, the women of the church call my mom a bitch and a hoe and all this kind of shit behind her back, right? So I used to be like, man, you know what? And I'm just like, wow, And I would run to my brother and say, hey, sister so and so cussed, she said, something, out of line, right? And he was so young, he didn't really, realize, but he'd just be like, ooh, because he heard somebody say, cuss or whatever. And he would do the same thing to me. And he was like, sister so-and-so called mama, a B word, or, call mama, the S word or whatever, or sister so-and-so said the S word. And I would be like, what is going on? Like, people cuss in church. You know what I'm saying? Like, you'd be like, what in the world? And they're calling my mom, all these kind of names, and they call him my father at the time, a bastard, and they'll call him an asshole periodically, like we as the children don't understand what they're saying, and that's just how they talk. That's just how they did. And I was just kind of like, now I'm really confused. I'm like, well, wait a minute, we're not supposed to cuss. It's a sin, and we're going to hell. Now, it's people they fucking cussing in the church. So I'm like, wait a minute, something's happening. And I need some answers. So I would go to my father and I'd be like, hey, sister so-and-so called mom, this. Why is she, why is they calling my mom stupid? Why are they calling my mom dumb? So on and so forth. So come to find out, they understand, or they know that my father is cheating on my mom because they seen him out in the street, or somewhere doing something. Or with some other woman, right? So, and then my mom began to find out more and more about what was going on. So I'm like, wow, like, really? So, okay, now I'm even more confused. And I'm like, okay, so this is supposed to be a man of God, right? This is somebody who is the pastor is supposed to be the watcher of our souls. So I'm like, okay, my father's beating on my mom. He's a pastor, so he's a man of God. Then he's cheating on my mom, but he's a pastor, so he's a man of God. So we have to fear him. We have to revere him. He's allowing other women to disrespect my mom. But he's a pastor, so we have to revere him. Because he's the watcher of our souls, right? So, and I'm like. And this is as a kid, I'm trying to figure this stuff out. As a child, I'm trying to figure this stuff out. Like, how is this happening in the church? Like, this is the church, right? And lo and behold, as I began to listen to other messages, I got older and I got to hang around with some of the pastors' other children, and their children, and I found out that they had children out of wedlock too. They had stepbrothers and stepsisters, and they cussed and all that, right? So now I'm like, okay, so wait a minute, maybe maybe this isn't as bad as I thought it was, right? Um, but the biggest thing that bothered me was the guilt. Like, I felt so guilty being around these people because I know what they do. And I felt ashamed. I was embarrassed that I'm like, I go to a church where people talk shit about my mom and dad. Like, really? Like, I don't even, like, how does that even work? So, uh, I began to speak out. I was a little, perturbed. So I would say, hey, don't talk about my mom like that. Not while I'm standing here, because now I'm older, and for so many years, nobody ever really, nobody ever really challenged them in anything they say, and they would talk and speak freely, right? But now, they, you never hear anything like that again, because they say, oh, that's the pastor's son, and blah 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 blah. But hey, that all that little, I'm not his son per se. I'm the stepson. People knew that, and they kind of treated me as such, right? Because it was me and my mom first. Then my mom met the pastor, then married the pastor, became the first lady. The first lady then has a child by the pastor. I'm sorry. Wait, the pastor don't have children, but this lady is the pastor's wife, and she comes into church and she has a child already. Like, what is this, right? So you can see how, like, I call it the church garbage, right? And you can see how the church garbage is starting to build up, because everybody who's been going to the church starts to get jealous, and they feel some kind of way because he's married a woman and taking a child that's not his and taking care of, and so on and so forth, which is the quote unquote righteous thing to do. So anyway, so let me see. Let me skip over that. Then, of course, she becomes pregnant with my little brother, and my little brother is, he's born into the church as well. But he was rebellious from jump. Like, he just, after growing up and seeing how he's 3 years younger than I am, and he grew up in it too, so he knows the garbage that, the other side of the church. So it's really difficult to put something over on me when it comes to, the church and fear-based belief systems, right? Dogmatic belief systems, because I'm conscious now. Like, I understand now. I'm older now, and these things are not, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of these things, and these concepts they have meanings to them. They have something that can, help us all. So, let me put where is my, you know what, I'm gonna have to put that's weird. I can't put my information in there. If you are in danger of hurting yourself or someone else, please call 911 to get you some help. All right, guys. We definitely don't want you to be out there. We definitely don't want you to be out there without some help. You know what I mean? So let me put this in the post. So you can also call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. I got a little carried away on that one. I'm passionate about this, man, because I think my obligation as a spiritual teacher, a life coach, relationship coach, youth coach, I just think that it's my obligation as someone in a role like that to share this information with, and not a lot of people understand, what fear-based belief systems are, dogmatic belief systems are. A lot of us live in fear, and because of that, we make decisions based on, uh, based on these beliefs, right? And it's not really and we don't live in a world that one belief, um, where one belief supersedes another. We don't have that. We're not that advanced yet. If we're at a point to where if one belief system would rule over another, it would be illegal, right? They would definitely make it against the law to practice this one said belief system if if something like that actually worked. Um, I mean, there's layers to it. There's layers to it, and I'm more than sure that I'm going to get some pushback on or feedback on this particular video, because I know some people, they don't understand, or they may understand. You never know. So I welcome either or criticism, both negative and positive, because I accept that that's where you are, and this is where I am at this point. And if I evolve, or and I'm wrong about something, I'll be the first to admit, hey, I had this wrong. I didn't get this right. I didn't study deep enough to find out a deeper meaning. Or I'm not above that. So like I welcome criticism from both negative and positive. So what else? Where am I? So fast forward to. Um, so I finally get out of the house. I go, join the army. I went to the army after I got out of, my training, basic training, AIT, and all that good stuff. I get to, you know what? Hold on, let me get some. Let me get my. Where is my water? Be right back. All right. Get some water real quick. Get a little parched. So then I go to the army, and I meet even more people with more diverse backgrounds, right? I meet some Buddhists. I meet some Muslims. I meet some Orthodox Christians. I meet some unorthodox Christians. I meet some Seventh-day Adventists. I meet some Episcopalians, right? There is a lot, right? There's a lot of different religions out there. There's a lot of people out there that are doing things differently. I meet, naturalists. I meet naturopaths. I meet people who have never been to the doctor before, because, they're into yoga, they're into chiropractic care, they're into all these things, right? So I'm like, wow. Then, I get to go to other countries, right? So I go to Korea. That was one of my first overseas tours. I go to Korea, and I find out all of this, like, it was crazy. A bunch of, just like mind-blowing, they're meditating, they're doing yoga, massages. Like, they got these parlors there where, of course, they cater to soldiers, you know what I'm saying? The whole nine. But it was just amazing that it was so different, how different it was, how the people interacted with you. It was, to me, it was great, because I was like, wow, they're very, very receptive of us. But growing up, you have this fear of going to other countries, because of what the media, the propaganda that the media pushes, right? So I went to Korea and had a blast. My next overseas duty station was Germany, and I was like, wow, like Germany, but you got, you have the whole fear of the Nazi regime, and it's like, you know, wow, what's going to happen? Are they going to even accept? Do they even let black people in Germany? Show you how naive I was, right? And I get there, and it is the polar opposite of what they talk about. So after that, I got to go to South Africa and do some training over there, and it was South Africa was nothing like Africa that I saw growing up. Like the only Africa that I remember growing up was the babies with the big belly, snotty nose, and flies flying all around their eyes, their mouth, their nose, and all that garbage, right? So I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, I don't. How is this Africa? And to tell you how even more naive I was when I saw white people there, so-called white people. I'm like, why are there white people in Africa? I asked my sergeant. I was like, hey, what part of Africa is this where there's white people running around? Like, I've never, the only white people I've seen in Africa are the reporter and maybe the cameraman, shooting videos of the little kids there, or maybe the little. I thought the only white people there would go just for that amount of time to do the video, and then they would get out of there before somebody killed them. I thought that was the posture of, I don't know. I just thought that was the posture of South Africa, and they have buildings. They had everything, and I got to visit different parts of Africa, and like they have buildings, they have a rail system, they have skyscrapers, they have bridges, they have beautiful water. They have a sewage system. They have cities, they have states, like they have restaurants, very expensive restaurants, right? I mean, like, but nobody. You grow up and you're never told this. You're never taught this because for whatever reason, people want to keep this information from you, and I'm just like, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand. Like, why would they want to keep, all this stuff from people? So I'm trying to figure out, like, why in the world would they say this? Like, they lied to us. Like, I felt like I was, I felt really betrayed. I felt lied to. And I'm like, man, now I began to see the world in a different, completely different set of eyes. And I just didn't handle it too well. And I was just like, I became very, I don't know, resentful. I resented. I was like, I don't like this, man. Like, this is messed up. Like, I really feel some kind of way about this. But now, I understand why all that had to happen, and I had to experience these things the way that I experienced them, right? I understand the purpose for it now. I get it, okay? I totally get it. And it's just, it's amazing. It is amazing when you actually become aware that this is an awakening, and it's something that you can look back on, and you can laugh, and you can say, I graduated from this thought process. Now my mind has evolved to something higher, and I'm no longer kind of trapped into this thought process. So fast forward, I saw a lot of people in the army. In the army, I did some Tai Chi, I did some yoga, which got me a little piece of the mindfulness aspect of it, meditating and things of that nature. I touched on that just a little bit, right? It was introduced to me. So, and I had a friend who was who was atheist. So I got to, and he was my roommate. So I had a chance to like really learn a lot from him, from that aspect of it. Um, then I had another roommate who was a Mormon, and I really got an understanding from that aspect of it. But now I think back, and after I get older and I find out what a Mormon is, and I'm like, he really wasn't, but I'm not gonna judge though. I'm not gonna judge. It's not something that, hey, it is what it is. So I just find out so much. You find when you come out of the bubble, that you're raised in under your parents or grandparents and so on and so forth. Things are just a lot different when you get out in the world on your own. So after that, let's see what else. So I get out the Army. I get off of active duty, and I decide to get married. And I got married under the label of Christianity. So we had I don't know, but I was still really on the fence about the whole thing. But I felt like after meeting her, and she was in the church and all this kind of good stuff, I didn't let that deter me from the relationship. Excuse me, that we had, and I was like, okay, cool. So we got married, had 3 children. Beautiful young lady. We had 3 beautiful children, and 7 years into the marriage, I had another awakening. So after not going to church for like maybe 5 years, never stepped foot in the church. After another 2 years, I meet her, and after another 2 years or so, we get married. And now, I'm back in the church, and so I'm meeting people. Everybody likes my wife and I. They like our children and the whole nine. So it wasn't shortly after I began to go up in the hierarchy of the church. So I became a deacon, okay? And, had a little responsibility in the church. And after that, I became a minister. And, I would minister in the church and give messages and so on and so forth. But I would either do the youth, I'd minister to the youth, or when we would go out into the community, I would minister in the community. I would give messages at the nursing home, at shelters and stuff like that, right? So just working my way up, paying your dues, if you will. I don't know if they still do stuff like that now or what. I wouldn't know, but it was just weird because I felt it's a very, very euphoric feeling when you when you deliver a message to someone and they get it. Like, it's a very, very rewarding feeling, and they would always get that message simply because I was preaching the same stuff that the guy or the preacher before would preach when they came there. So they were familiar with it, and it was just cool. It was just familiar to them, and that's why they liked listening to it, right? So I can remember one time I'm like, will they shake their head and say yeah to anything I say? I was just like, I said some off the wall stuff one day, and everybody was just kind of like, amen, amen, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, wow, like I don't even know if they paid attention to what I just said. Like, it's weird, And nobody caught it, nobody said anything after the message or anything, and I'm just like, wow. So, as a younger man, I'm doing this stuff, and I'm like, man, this is not right. Like, there's got to be something to this. Like, there's got to be some kind of craziness that I'm just not aware of, right? So anyway, as I began to study, I got deeper and deeper into the Bible, and I kind of pulled away from my doubt, per se, right? And because I was going up in the hierarchy of the church, and I became the relationship counselor at the church, if you will, to help people with their marriage and so on and so forth. So I was doing that for a while, and I loved that. Like I really genuinely loved helping people with their relationships. And it was just funny because we were young. My wife and I were young when we had our children, and it was crazy because we were giving advice to people that had been married for like 10, 20 years. And I'm just like, why are they even listening to us? But, she'll tell you that the pastor would always talk about, how much he admired our relationship. And, for whatever reason, and he was pretty partial to us. He showed us some favor, in the whole get up and everything. So, what else? So I will never forget, it was December 7th of, I want to say December 7th of 2000, no, not December 7th, November 7th of 2007. I ran into one of my sergeants in the National Guard. I was in a National Guard unit, and he asked me, he overheard me tell somebody that I was going to be in the, I asked him, hey, are you still having service? Because, National Guard, it's 2 weeks a year, every other weekend, or something like 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, so on and so forth. So it was our drill weekend, and this one of the sergeants asked me, was I coming into the church service or whatever? And I said, yeah, let me go get my Bible. So my sergeant at the time asked me, he said, what's your, do you carry your Bible with you? I said, yeah. He said, what's your, denomination, or what's your belief or whatever? And I told him, I'm a Christian, and, I go to a Pentecostal church. And he was like, oh, okay. He said, I bet me you can have some pretty interesting conversations. So I'm like, yeah, that's why he said that. He's like, yeah, he said, because I used to go to church too. He said, I used to do the whole organized religion thing. And I said, okay. I said, oh, all right. And he began to, so it just kind of aroused my curiosity, me being the Christian that I was. So, hey, let me see if there's a chance that I could possibly save this brother, right? So, or I could guide him somehow, back to the loving arms of Christ, right? So I said, okay, let me, then I said some things to him. I threw some Bible verses at him. He threw some Bible verses right back at me. And the one verse that did it for me, that just caused my mind to just go, was Isaiah 45:7, right? Isaiah 45:7 is the scripture that blew my mind, right? And he baited me in very, very well. We talked about how, evil people and good people, and well, God don't cause people to get sick, and God don't do this, and Jesus died for everybody, and there's no way he would do anybody evil, and the Lord won't do evil, God won't do evil, he just won't do nothing like that. It's not what it is. And I said I wanted to go into the whole rebuking thing, but I was so flustered and angry at the time. I was like, it's gonna turn into something bad, and this is my sergeant. I don't want to get into nothing like that, because you get in trouble in the Army, Article 15s and all that kind of stuff when you start bucking up to, anyway. So I was like, no, I think I'm just gonna stick with, my thing, man. You do what you want to do though. And he said, okay. He said, I don't want you to be offended. He said, no, I want you to research what I'm talking about. He said, because it seemed like you're interested. And I said, that's some good information, but I would have to go back and look at those scriptures to see if what you're saying is really true. Because at the time, I didn't know what Isaiah 45:7 said. And I'd already read the Bible once already, right? I read the Bible all the way through one time. It was the summer, and I promised myself that I was going to do it. So I did it. And I was in like the the 7th or 8th grade or something like that. So anyway, I was young, and I did. I read the Bible all the way through. So of course I didn't remember. And I look. He said, well, look at Isaiah 45:7 real quick, and if you think that everything we talked about is garbage after you read that, I'll leave it alone. So I said, okay, cool. So I flipped through Isaiah. I get to 45 and I read verse 7, and it says, I make peace, I create evil, I the Lord do all these things. And I just, like, my head said, boof. Like, I think I literally fainted, right? And I just didn't even realize that I was out on my feet. And I remember zoning out, right? I remember like literally zoning out, and I looked and I read it again, and I read it out loud, and I said, I make peace, I create evil, I the Lord do these things. I the Lord do all these things. And I'm like, I said, how come I never, and I asked him, I said, how come I never heard this? And he said, man, it's, some people don't know about it. Some people don't realize it. And I said, why would God do evil? Like, why would it say he would do evil? And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm looking at the verse, and it's Isaiah, talking to the people, and basically, he's telling them like it is. He's giving them the business because they are, they're believers who are going through, like they're having, they're bouncing back and forth on whether or not they want to, continue, believing on, God per se. And I was like, wait. I said, it can't possibly mean what it says. And he said, well, what does it say? I mean, are we not to, he said, are we not to believe what the Bible says, or are we supposed to believe what the Bible says? So, I mean, and it says, I make peace, I create evil, I, the Lord, do all these things. He said, you read it. And I just, man, I didn't have any words. I didn't have any comeback for that. Like, I couldn't rebuke him, because I'm like, well, wait a minute. So God is creating these things, and he caused all this. And, understanding that I've had a little bit of, a little bit of information from here. So I'm understanding karma. I'm understanding dogma. I'm understanding a little bit of natural stuff. I'm understanding, mindful stuff and different other, beliefs. And I'm like, okay, why does that make so much sense? And I think about everything that I've been through, right? And I'm like, why does that make so much sense? Like, I don't get that. And then I immediately think that, okay, so if that's the case, I got to do some more reading, because if God is doing this, I got to remember what's going on with Satan and the devil, and what's going on with these guys. And then I think back to the story of Job, where, Satan is walking the earth seeking whom he may devour, walking to and fro. And then he asked God, can he attack his servant Job? And I'm like, wait a minute. And then God okayed it. And I'm like, wait a minute. But they say it was to test. And I'm like, well, why does he need to test us in order for us to, I just, like, I don't get it. Like, I get it, but I don't get it. So if if Jesus died for our sins, so we don't have to go through anything, right? Why would he test us to see if we're going to be loyal to him, or cause us to go through all this great turmoil, just to see, or just to prove to Satan that, he's one of his children, or he's not gonna, I don't know. Like, I was just like, that's not good, right? That really, really bothers me. So, that's just, I don't know. Like, I don't know. But anyway, I have to do a part 2, right? I have to do a part 2, and I have to remember that I stopped off, with my sergeant talking about Job and Isaiah 45:7. Yeah. So yeah, I'll just do a part 2, and hopefully you guys got some value out of this, and you learned a little bit about my story, and why I'm choosing to help enlighten people as opposed to continue to let people walk around just ignorant. You know what I'm saying? I refuse to do that. And me being in the position that I am, I feel like I should tell people. So anyway, thank you so much for your time, and shout out to everybody that is aware of National Suicide Prevention Month. All right, y'all keep helping out. Okay, keep everybody encouraged. Check on people. All right, call people, check on to see how they doing. Go by their house, knock on the door, let them know you care about them. Give them a kiss, give them a hug. All right, that's it. Thank you so much. Live life to the fullest. Y'all take it easy and try not to do too much. Peace. Come back tomorrow for number 2, for my spiritual journey number 2. All right. Peace. Okay, so